Well, hello there, and thank you for tapping into this episode of Bandwidth Coast to Coast. You know, with so much happening in the world, more niches, more rabbit holes, more outrage, it's easy to miss major things that are happening, which is kind of a strange truth. Major changes can completely fly right below the radar, right out in the open without getting due attention. The truth of that paradox gets all the more apparent in our time if understanding the change requires nuance, high orders of technical understanding, and an imagination to see through the grifters to clearly make out what's possible, or even likely. So-called Web3 is one of those things. I'm sure those listening have heard of cryptocurrencies, one of the many outcroppings from a white paper which was published under a pseudonym on October 31st, 2008. As my guest gets into on the interview, this white paper and the technology it describes, namely blockchain, was a response to the financial crisis and the gamesmanship that central banks play with printing money, which inevitably can devalue the currency while inflating other parts of the market. But what I'd like to posit to you, dear listener, is that blockchain, whether from a cryptocurrency, a smart contract, a decentralized autonomous organization, non-fungible token, Web3, or some other permutation I've yet to hear about, is going to be an unknown cornerstone of our lives in the next 10 years. Whether you understand how it works or not, there's currently a race to develop a swath of new applications, quote, on-chain. Let me give you an example that unless you're one of the developer listeners, you likely have never heard of. They're called application programming interfaces, or better just abbreviated as APIs. Without these, your smartphone would be nothing more than a slim Garmin with a great camera. And what they are, put plainly, is a set of protocols that allow an exchange of data between two different systems, like the systems of your phone with the server. I'm going to run you through this. You open up Twitter on your phone, for instance, and while it's loading, your phone is hitting an API, and it's providing your login information to Twitter. And in exchange, it's receiving back data packets with your timeline. The same thing happens when you ask your Alexa a question, receive an email, or hell, literally do anything on the internet. That is a cornerstone of the web and your daily lives, in which if you were alive, a revolution happened you had no idea about. The difference with blockchain, crypto, Web3, etc. is probably more revolutionary, more secure, inherently more trustworthy, and has the same silent ability to impact your whole life. Except this time, it's taking aim at your bank, managing your investment portfolio, creating nonprofits that run themselves through a decentralized community, or be your proof of purchase to enter a music festival. Really, there's a lot that could potentially change. And I don't intend to be hyperbolic, but this really has an opportunity to significantly impact how technology is built, to which is how our current economy and society is run. My guest for this episode is Dr. Merav Ozair, a fintech professor at Rutgers Business School. She's published many great articles in the field, everything about Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, the financial regulation of it, and kind of runs the whole gamut of what's possible, what's likely, and even laments a bit on what's happened with cryptocurrencies, of which we get into a little bit, where they seem to be looked at more as speculative assets, far away from what that white paper I mentioned envisioned for the future with them. For what I hope becomes a reoccurring guest on a truly massive subject, in this episode, we scratch the surface on what is blockchain, Bitcoin versus crypto, and the promise that tech can bring. With a whole lot of healthy debate in between, this one is fast and it's dense. As always, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoy. Real quick before the episode begins, if you like what you hear, please tap that follow or subscribe button. You also can find this episode, all episodes in the series, or check out our Daily Minute podcast by visiting us at bandwidth.productions. Ah, that lovely robot. Thank you again. Good evening. And
Good
would you mind
evening.
just introducing yourself right quick?
Okay, my name is Merav Ozair. My affiliation is Dr. Merav Ozair, leading blockchain expert and fintech professor at Rutgers Business School. So that's my affiliation, and a little bit about my background. I think, if I may, is a little bit maybe unconventional. I started as a teenager in tech. I mean, I went to a STEM school. A lot of engineering and computer science and physics and all of the science. And then when I went to college, I got introduced to everything that has to do with economics and data science. I was very fascinated with how the economy works and what drives the economy. So I've always been like a very curious child. I mean, ask my mom; she's she will tell you that. But so I was trying to figure out how can I put my interest in how the economy works and how the society works, and all of this, because basically economics is social science. That's what people miss. There's a lot of social science there, because people just think about the financial markets, but it's part of. But economics it started with a philosophy, in fact. In any event, so I was trying, always to figure out how can I take my two passions of economics, finance, and tech. So when I went for my PhD at Stern Business School in finance, so it made sense to me to become a quant. What is a quant? It's basically data science for finance. That's how I would like to describe it. And it made sense because I can do some algorithm, I can code, I can put my technical skills into some financial problems and economic problems. So I've done that. I've done some research. I've worked with the hedge funds and with some algorithm, investing, trading. And when I did my research on FX, which is foreign currency, I stumbled on crypto. And back when I started, that was like 6-7 years ago. When I stumbled on crypto, I think today is a little bit more structured, the market, but back then, it was like, crypto and FX, it's always like in one jar. And because, it's traded 24/7, global, in pairs. So it's, the way I like to describe it, like it looks like a cow, but doesn't behave like a cow. So what is it exactly? I mean, yeah, it looks 24/7 pairs, but when I'm looking at the FX, the traditional FX, like the euro dollar or the euro yen, it has its own parameters, that factors that affect it. But when you're trying to use those for the crypto, it's like I don't care. I have my own mind. So I had to understand what this is. I mean, and I kind of got the idea that it's not anything like what we call like the fiat or the traditional currency that is issued by a central bank, any central bank. So it has to be something else. So what is that something else? And as I started, digging into that, because I'm very diligent, so I realized, oh, there's technology behind it. Oh, there's blockchain technology. So I had to understand that. So I got really sucked into that, understanding consensus mechanism and protocols and how it's evolving. And I'm very much into, what can you do with that? How can that be evolved? How can you make it better? How can you scale it? How, there's all kinds of questions of, oh, but it's so clunky, it's so this, it's not mainstream, people don't understand it. So what can we do to be like that, to be like an app that you use on your phone? And the fact that it has technology behind it and it's attached to, it relates to society and economics, but it has technology, I felt like so like lightning. I mean, like a bulb, like woof. this is it. Technology and economics and social. That's exactly where I'm supposed to be, because I was waiting for that to happen. It was just made for me. So that's my story, I guess.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I can understand. I was thinking that as soon as you said that you had like an engineering background, I was like, oh, this makes total sense. Because most of everything that makes Bitcoin and all these cryptocurrencies possible is like hardcore math, physics, and tech, right? Which is pretty
Right.
crazy.
Right.
Well, I'm excited to get into that. Real quick before I'm going to segue and ask you that question, which is, what do you like to do that makes you happy? We're to start talking about some like, I don't know, Terminator level technology here that sounds like way off into the future. So let's talk more about the humanity in all of us. What do you like to do that makes you happy?
I think that there's another thing that is kind of maybe unique about me is like, usually people have like the right brain and the left brain, like the creative one and the logical one. That one is more, dominant than the other usually. In my case, they're both very dominant. So I always had this kind of like, right, not, they always wanted to work together, and I always was trying, for them to work together. So I'm a very creative person. And I think that, so my creativity comes in many ways. One is, it's like I make jewelries, I make, clothes, I like to, I'm very creative, in the way I express myself. I like to write. But making jewelry and thinking creatively is the fun part that I like to do. It's like what relaxes me and makes me happy, being creative. And I always, even though technology seems like very rigid, but it's not so. I mean, in order to really innovate, you have to be creative. You have to have a creative mind. Yes, you need the technical skills, but those who have really been like in the forefront of innovation, they've been very great, because you need that creativity in order to come up with something that we haven't seen before.
Or even sometimes to just get yourself out of a hole.
Exactly. So I think that, when you try to put people in a box, or you're just an artist, or you're just a developer or an engineer, it's not true. I mean, you can combine them both. And I think, and now I feel very happy with this combination. I was trying to fight it, I have to be either this or that, because that's what I, was demanded, so to speak, for me. Especially when you're a child. I mean, what are you? But so now I think that, I have this creativity, in a more like an artistic way. But I think I'm bringing it also to think about problems like now in the blockchain space, which there's a lot of things that need to be resolved in order for that to become mainstream, in order to really deliver the premise of Bitcoin. And I know that people have forgotten what was the premise of Bitcoin, and I'm here to educate people that we should never forget that.
Well, yeah, we could definitely. I would love to hear what you would say the premise of it is. But I think that's great though that you like to pursue so many different pursuits, because of, I mean, especially in areas that are new or like this, where it's multidisciplinary. And I mean, honestly, the world that's going forward is multidisciplinary.
Exactly.
And it's like, I have this like little thing that someone said to me once. They were like, my industry is like going down, and the only industry that's not is yours, and meaning tech. And I was like, actually, I think a different way is that tech is just infecting every other industry, and exactly. It's changing, and whatever is in there is completely like being burnt up, and something else is coming out of it, which like fundamentally is a different structure, different behavior. It's a whole different thing. And really what that ends up meaning is that everything is somewhat of a hybrid in some way. Mm-hmm. And when I was and I love everything you said, especially about blockchains, because so much of this is, people have a hard time, because I feel like everything, especially in just the zeitgeist, is just like, it's this or it's that. Mm-hmm. Where this is like, well, it's none of those things, and it's also some of those things because of the behavior mm-hmm. of it, and it's different. And it's a bit of two different worlds that we haven't seen before.
Right.
And that's kind of the whole world of where we're entering right now. So hey,
Right.
that's great. Also that you do things other than just tech. Okay, so what do you think the purpose of Bitcoin is, to go back?
Well, I mean, if you think about it, let's go back, I don't know how many years, like almost 12, 13 years, at least 12, right? It was launched in January of 2009. So we are almost 12 years for sure, if not entering the 13. And if you think about it, let's think back what happened in exactly right there. I mean, when people say it's a coincidence, no, it's not a coincidence. Exactly, it was launched exactly after the financial crisis in 2008. There's no coincidence here. And the premise of Bitcoin was, okay, I know that it sounds like very, some kind of anarchy or something like that, but let's put that aside, okay? I mean, I'm not going to, try to go and rebel and and lead like a revolution right now. But let's go back to that. I mean, the novelty of the idea of what Bitcoin was trying to do, in a sense of looking at the society in global sense and what it means. So the idea behind it was, let's create a financial system, a payment. It started as a payment system. It didn't really get to what it was supposed to do, because a lot of things happened in the way, and we might be able to talk about it. But the idea was that we want to break through from the financial institutions and the central bank and the government, and not let them control our financial life. We're going to control our financial life. So we're going to create this system that is trustless, that we can still trust each other even though we don't know each other, but we don't need an intermediary to tell us how to trust each other. And that's, all the beauty of, this consensus mechanism and the mining and everything else. And we create this peer-to-peer system with a consensus mechanism. And in a sense, it was, if you think about it, it was socialism and capitalism living together in one system. And I explain what I mean by that. And this is how we have to think about things. People always thinking about one or the other. And I'm thinking, no, let's hybrid. Let's think, in how things can integrate and why they need to integrate in the right way. And I think Bitcoin just showed us that it can be integrated and it has to. So the mission was very social, right? Peer-to-peer system, run by the people, for the people, right? We don't need any intermediaries. However, they did know if in order for that to really function and be trustless and people can trust each other, there is this mining concept. So the mining concept, you need people to validate a transaction, right? You need to mean people to mine it. So
before we get into mining, can we go just?
But let me just,
Okay, go ahead. Finish your thought.
One point here why I'm saying that capitalism and socialism are working together. So the socialism part, we understand already, right? But in order for that to function, you need to do capitalism. So they understood people are not going to do it for nothing. You have to reward them. And this is how the capitalism gets into to help the socialism function. So the capitalism and the socialism are kind of like working together in order to make this happen. And that was the premise that we kind of forgot. So, but I just think that, we can't have both working together. It's just a matter of people trying to think outside the box. And that's the whole idea. And I think Bitcoin just showed us that you can think out of the box. I mean, because you want it to function, but you need to reward people, you need to incentivize them. So the rewarding aspect, that's the capitalism aspect that they call it. Because it needs, in order for that socialism to work. So they can be integrated together in order to deliver something that the premise is a system that is for the people, by the people. So we, for the people, by the people, we decide how to reward them. We decide how to penalize them, but it's us as a community deciding about that. It's not coming from above. It's not an enforced regulation. So we can still control it and control this capitalism, so to speak. So that's a long answer, I guess.
Oh, it's okay. You can keep going as many long answers as you're like. Okay, so the purpose is to take control of our financial system. Is that what you said? Or take control of our finances
Yeah, I
through
mean,
a mixed system built on technology of rules, which is, I guess, the socialism, right? In your analogy
right.
here of how we can trust each other to complete a transaction, either a bit of information or an exchange of money, which goes on to information in this
Right.
system, and then a capitalistic function, which is mining, where it is, if you are helping drive that rule system of consensus of transactions that are happening, you will be rewarded over time for equal to the amount of effort that you put in.
Right? Exactly. And there are rules, and if you're not following the rules, you're going to be penalized. So we are the community, the consensus mechanism, the community decides how to penalize you and how to reward you, whether you're worthy of reward or you're going to penalize because you are acting against the community. So that's the idea. So I think it's a really great proof of concept that this type of socialism, capitalism can work together. And if it is controlled, I mean, I don't like the word control, but it is empowered, maybe that's a better word, by the community.
Right.
And not by the government, let's put it this way.
Right. The people who are actively involved in the transactions or involved in the network are the people who are setting the rules through consensus, which maybe it might be a good time to kind of explain what blockchain is, because blockchain and Bitcoin are a bit of the same. So let me take a quick stab at it. So blockchain is a consensus protocol and a way of storing information distributedly across of a network where there are nodes, which are essentially stores of all the transactions that happen on the network. And then there are users that have a ledger, which is their record of transactions that they have done on there. And let's just say you and I wanted to buy a piece of jewelry from you, and we wanted to do it on Bitcoin. I would give you the agreed upon price, and then the nodes would say, okay, hey, these people are trying to get a transaction. Let's take a look at all the transactions that one is done versus the next one. Let's see if these are real actors. Hey, everyone else, you guys getting the same list of bills that I am? Yes, it's good. Okay, cool. This transaction is going to happen. X amount is going this way. And then it's written to the chain, which is then stored. Chain is just a series of transactions on a database, is then stored on each of these nodes, in which case people can, once again, if I wanted to buy another piece of jewelry or whatever happens next, the same set of things occur. But the power of it, and it's decentralized, is that anyone can split up a node. They just, get all of the record transactions and they start serving as an open node on the network to verify more transactions and so on and so forth. And then after a certain number of transactions have been minted or concurred, that's when a new block comes into the chain, which is the sum total of coins in circulation, and so on and so forth. Anything you wanted to add to there? Because that was fast, but I wanted to give it an overview.
Well, usually when people ask me about it, I try to be less technical and talk more like in layman terms in order to bring people to understand it. Because when I'm trying to talk about nodes and and miners, people kind of start losing me completely. And then there's every sentence bring another question, then another question. So I worked on that a lot, and trying to figure out how can I really make it a little bit simpler for people to understand and bring like the mainstream and the people on the street to understand what it means as a blockchain. So the way I like to see, people like to think about the blockchain, they always say, oh, it's a ledger. Yes, it is a ledger, but it's a very unique ledger. It's an immutable ledger, meaning that you can't change anything. It's not like a ledger like the Excel that you can change and come, create and delete and make all kinds of changes, and no one will remember, what was before. This one is something that cannot be deleted, cannot be altered, cannot be changed. That's what we say, it's immutable. So it stays there forever and ever and ever and ever. So as long as, you know, this technology lives, this ledger will live, and whatever transaction is created is there forever. So this is why I'm saying that everything that is launched or created or being transferred on you know, on the ledger, on this ledger, can be traceable and trackable because it's there forever. So that's one beauty of this technology, that it's not a simple ledger, it's something that it's there for everyone to see and forever. So you can do anything to change it. This is part of the trustless idea, that if you were able to alter and change, then the trust issue goes out the window. So it had to be that kind of ledger that doesn't allow you to change things. So that's one aspect of, you know, this immutability that helps you to build this peer-to-peer system, because otherwise, how can I trust that you're not going to come and, you know, delete it and erase everything that was happening just before? So that's the one aspect of it. So on top of that is, as you mentioned, you know, a node. And what is a node? It's a computer, basically, right? So as long as you have internet connection, no matter where you are, I can be sailing to Alaska or on the top of the Himalaya. If I have internet connection and I have my laptop, I can tap it into the blockchain. That's another beauty of it. So it has access from everywhere to anybody. So everyone can see that ledger. It's not like, you know, a centralized ledger that you have, let's say, on AWS. Only up, you know, you have a certain, you know, permission, you can get in. No, this is something that everyone can see. This is another reason why it is trustless, because everyone can see it. If it was just, you know, permission to some very exclusive group, then we lose the trust. So it had to be that type of decentralization that we're seeing. But if you think about it, just, you know, access to everyone, no matter who you are. We don't know who you are. We don't know your color. We don't know your race. We don't know your age. We don't know anything about you. All what we know is that you can tap into that as long as you can. You know, you have internet connection. So that's, you know, the you know, the access, the visibility, the decentralization that we were talking about. And on top of that, so you were talking about transactions and a block. So people are always asking, you know, why do we have a block, right? What does it mean? So I thought about it long and hard, you know, how can I explain to people in a way that they might be able to understand? Think about it. So the way that I came to, you know, explain it is that a block is like a file. Let's say you have a file in your computer, and a file has, you know, a lot of accounts, right? You know, and they have all the information of this account, the transactions, and everything else. So you can think about a block as a collection of transactions, and the transactions have information about, you know, the ID. The ID is like, you know, the wallet. People always ask me, what is a wallet? You think about it as an ID, your account number. That's how you can think about the wallet, because they get, you know, kind of like kind of put off, you know, wallet. What is a wallet? It's an account, you know, your bank account, same idea. So think about, you know, your wallet as, you know, as the ID of who you are, of your account. So we have information about how this transaction transferred from one account to another account, how much, when, timestamps. So you have all this information. So it's a collection of all these transactions, like you have in a file. The file, you know, also you have a collection of all the transactions, right? But the nice thing about this block, again, it cannot be changed, it cannot be, you know, deleted, and everyone have access to that, not just, you know, some centralized manager. And on top of that, that's the part of the security aspect, you know, it has to be secure, right? We say about block and chain, right? So the chain that we're talking about is how each and every block is chained to each other. There is, you know, the ID of each and every block is created as part of the block that came before it. And this is how they are chained to each other in this cryptographic way. And this is why we say that, as if you have a lot of blocks, and it's kind of like, a very old transaction, in order to change that transaction, it will take a lot of time consuming and money in order to change it, because you have to change not just this block, but the previous one and the previous one and the previous one and the previous one. So it's a lot of money and a lot of time. And there were some analyses to show, I think that's just an hour of, trying to change, this, like the
ledger.
Like the 51 ledger of Bitcoin will cost you more than $1 million. Now, a lot of money for really not getting far with that. Not to mention that if you change it, remember that everyone has access. Every computer has access. So every computer has the entire ledger. So you'll have to change it. Let's say, theoretically speaking, there are millions of nodes like that, with millions of copies like that. So you'll have to change it on all these millions copies in order to make a change for that blockchain. So this is why when we say that it's almost impossible to hack and change the blockchain, that's the reason, because it was created in that sense. Because otherwise, how can I trust if I know that it can be change in the blink of a second? So this is, I know there's a lot of technology behind it, but these are all the reasons why we created this system, this technology system with all of this mechanism, in order to create that trust layer, that we can really do it peer-to-peer without the intermediaries. Because otherwise, how can I trust it's not going to change? So that's the way that I like to explain it to but in less technical terms.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, because with blockchain, there's so many different layers. Because then you enter Bitcoin, and then it's like value gets thrown in there too. Mm-hmm. But so like the different blocks are like files on a desktop of your computer.
Right.
And if you were to click in there, you would see transactions that occurred that created that one. And then every time enough of those gets minted, there's enough transactions, there's another file on that desktop, except for we're talking about devices innumerable across all of the globe.
I mean the way that you can think about this block, I mean, the consensus mechanism, the way it was created, at least with Bitcoin, they had like a limit of, I think, 50 megabytes, that you can store there. So you can think about, like let's say with Excel, that you cannot have a file. Somebody tells you, oh no, an error, it cannot have more than this many observations. So this is how we have to think about it. So block is created that Excel spreadsheet tell you, oh, we can't have more more observations, only 20 observations. Otherwise, we have to create a new file. So this is how you have to think about it. So that's kind of the idea of why you have this block and that file and another file and another file and another file. It's as if, you created this restriction that Excel created, but for different reasons.
Right. But in this case, it's like a very simple mechanism that in such a way creates all these small atomic units.
Exactly.
To go backwards and search and then alter, and then have that alter reverberating all the way back in some way, because of how small it is. It's like death by 1,000 cuts, or in this case,
exactly.
1,000 computations in order to make that happen.
Exactly. So this is why we say it is impossible. You need a lot of computation power, a lot of money, and what's the point?
Right. Okay, that was a great framing. To go like a little bit longer on the trust aspect, there's also like a cryptographic layer that always like gets everyone eyes glazing over at that part of it, but really that's like the heart of the consensus protocol, which is such to say, like in like the broadest terms possible, that a certain number of other computers or nodes on the network need to agree to it, and this is what it's calculating that this is happening to the degree that it needs to happen in order to continue forward. I mean, this is largely the same with other crypto, but Bitcoin in particular is how it's functioning, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think that every blockchain, whether it's Ethereum or even Algorand, the proof of stake, they all have validators. And what do validators do? I call them validators. I mean, Bitcoin called them miners for proof it works, but at the end of the day, it's a validators because you need someone. Okay, so you don't have a bank. The validators do what the bank will do for you, right? This financial institution. If I now have a transaction with you, you buy jewelry from me, hopefully. I'm not selling them, but let's say I sell them. Then how do that really have that asset and you and I will trust you that you're really gonna pay me the $20. So we go through these, financial institutions, I'm paying with a credit card, they go to your bank, I go to my bank, and they go from my bank to your bank, and they're making sure, that you exist and you have a $20 and I exist and I have an account. So we both real. So they're making these validations and and this happens and then we pay for that, right? We pay for that with time, we pay for that with money. And we pay with that also that our financial information is centralized, that it's in the hand of those centralized organizations. So how can we not have these banks or financial institutions to do that? And we can still be able to trust each other that, you have an account, you're going to really send me this, 20, and I really exist, right? How can we know that? So you have these validators, all these nodes, the members, which you call the validators, and that's exactly what they do. Let's say, you going to, broadcast to the network, so to speak. That's the definition that we say. Or just to say, like we broadcast, there's a Visa transaction or something, right? That's what same idea. And you're broadcasting, I want to transfer $20 to this person's account, right? So they're going to validate that your account does exist, right? That it's really you, because you have to send this, your digital signature also with your private key. And you do have the $20. You're not just, saying that you do. They're gonna make sure that you have them and you can transfer that. And they make sure that I exist. My ID is my ID. And then they can validate that they can transfer that. So they also have to agree, like 51% of them have to agree about this information in order for that to happen. So that's the validators. And this is how coming back to the capitalism issue, if you want them to do this work, you have to reward them. They're not going to do it for free, right? You want them to help you make a transaction and trust, the system. So you have to reward them. So this is how we're going back to, the transaction, how it happens. In a way that you're rewarding those validators, whether it's proof of stake and proof of stake, you're also rewarding them, and your proof of work, you're also rewarding them. So that's the mechanism, whether it's Bitcoin or Ethereum or Algorand or any other. So that's something that is built in, this validation and the rewarding mechanism on how to reward. And I mean, I don't know if you're going to go to get to that, but even when now Ethereum is now thinking of moving proof of work to proof of stake, they're still thinking a lot about this consensus mechanism, how you can reward in a way that you incentivize good behavior and you penalize bad actors in a consensus mechanism that will allow this to function even though you move into proof of stake. So that's the idea of how we can still be empowered, that we have control over our finances, about we don't need any intermediaries, but at the same time we are rewarding those who are helping us validate the transaction. So that's
right, acting as the bank in this sense. Almost they're providing the computer equipment, the power that goes into it in order to run these transactions, the internet, paying Comcast, whoever they have to be able to go out there onto the net and actually validate these transactions. So it's incentivizing them to continue doing that while also creating mechanisms within the community that set the rules for the game, continue to, foster what the community wants in that as far as transactions and mutability and whatnot.
Right.
And then moving forward, I would love to come back to proof of stake, but one of the things that you said that I wanted to at least touch on, made sure we had time for, was the decentralized finance in general. So like, in this case, I wonder how can I put this? If you can expand a little bit more on how that industry or that concept can even exist now, because essentially what Bitcoin did, it pops onto the scene, and it at first was used as a currency. Like the first time I ever heard of it was for Silk Road. Buying drugs online.
I just about to publish an op-ed on Coinbase that explains how we completely deviated from what Bitcoin was supposed to do to what it's now, and hopefully it will come back.
It might. Yeah, I would love to read that, by the way. But yeah, it's turned into like a Robinhood or like a financial asset kind of tradability thing. Especially, in so many ways, it is much more like currency trading, but almost currency trading mixed with companies, because there's Bitcoin, which acts the most like a currency, and then there's other ones like you're talking about Ethereum, which really truly does act like a company, or other ones like decentralized land, where you can buy like digital properties with this coin, which once again, a little bit closer, but still is the company you're buying into that's, hosting this whole virtual world. But, Bitcoin comes in with this blockchain and, concept, which is amazing, is somewhat used as a currency in the beginning. I can't tell you how many times I've heard people like out in the wild, either friends or acquaintances, that say they lost most of their Bitcoin that would be worth, obscene amounts of money now, because I think it was Domino's or Pizza. I think it was Domino's was offering a thing where you can buy Bitcoin with a pizza. And they're like, whatever.
I heard about that. I wasn't there. I mean, I wish it was one of those, I got late there. I feel like, I should have gotten there early, but
even when you were saying 6 years ago, it sounded like it was back in the day, but this is just how fast it's moving.
Exactly. So the way that let's think about what is decentralized finance. If you think about it, it's something that's supposed to be decentralized, right? To begin with, that's the first thing. And finance is a lot of things. People just, again, I don't like to put things in boxes. That's my creative self that we know, because today, especially, you said everything is integrated, everything is multidisciplinary, everything is connected. And especially, what happened with COVID just, was like, a great use case to tell us how connected we are, and how we are really a super small village, that whatever happens in one maybe very far away place is going to affect you right here. And it just tells me thinking in little, silos and boxes is so not true. And just think about what just happened to us in the past year or even 2 years, since, the beginning of 2020. We are almost closing 2 years with this, if you think about it. So back to Bitcoin. So if you think about it, Bitcoin, the way that I think about it, payment is one function of the financial system, right? It was trying to, the premise is to create a decentralized payment system, a peer-to-peer payment system. So that was the first DeFi to think about it, the first decentralized finance application. But it had only one application, which is payment. But financially, in our financial world, we do more than just payment. We do a lot of other things. And in fact, if you think about it, the way that I think about it, in fact, I wrote something about it, I can send that to you, is that the way that I see it, everything is DeFi. Why? I'll explain myself. Because everything is transaction-based. Whatever we do in the economy is transaction-based. We always transact, and whether it's information or an actual asset, whether it's digital asset, physical asset, or everything is transaction based, one way or another. So everything that is transaction based needs to be authenticated in some way, right? Needs to have some kind of a system that allows to trust, right? That whatever I'm transferring from one, let's say, place to another, from one account to another, from one wallet, you can call it whatever you want, is real, is true, and authenticated, and whoever is transferring it does exist, and he or she is the right person, and whoever is receiving it is the right person, etc. So if without this authentication, no transaction can be transferred, nothing can happen, and nothing can be transferred. And that's at the core of everything that we do in our economy. Think about it. We always transferring something.
Yeah,
even when you write an email, when you write an email, you're transferring information, right?
When you walk into a store and look at somebody to know if you should buy, should I buy this? Can I trust that this isn't going to fall apart? Or if, whatever it may be, so much is understood and taken for granted in that looking each other in the eye.
Exactly. So we have to take that concept and create some mechanism that will allow you to trust whatever information you're receiving, whatever asset you going to buy or sell, or even get as a gift. And you want to get a gift that's going to blow up in your face. So you want to trust the person who's giving you the gift, right?
Or even in that sense, the cellophane wrap on things we buy, that gives us a bit of trust that it's never been opened. But you know what I mean?
Exactly. So there's a lot of trust, that we always, miss that. And we get back to the root of this trust only when things go haywire, like the Cambridge Analytica issue, like when there's a hack to your account, or this, or all kinds of kind of mishap that happens, and then people say, oh God, we need to trust. Then they come back to the root of trust, but that's basically at the basis of everything that we do in life. We're not gonna do anything if we don't trust the product or the service or the person or the place or whatever that is. I mean, am I gonna go on the plane if I don't trust the company who's flying the plane, or I don't trust that they're gonna really hire someone who's capable of flying the plane? I mean, everything is trust-based. So the beauty of this technology, whether it's NFTs, and this is why I'm big on NFTs, is the authentication issue and the trust issue. And the way that blockchain technology allows you to create this authentication and its immutability and its traceability and trackability, that you can create that trust in any transaction that you're going to do, whether it's information, whether it's, I can enter the store because I know that this is a trust authenticated place, and or it has a certificate, or you said the wrap of the gift, right? That I can have an authentication that this wrap of the gift is really being created with the right ingredients, and and it's not gonna do anything crazy, and I know who's the company. And so I have all this authentication that we can create like a smart contract, a token, that can authenticate that. So if you think of, so now I'm really maybe going in different directions, in sideways. But the point is that DeFi goes above and beyond just currency and trading. People always think about, centralized finance, that's trading and investing. No. Think about it in a broader way of what economic transactions are. Everything that we do is transaction based, and whatever we do, we need to trust each other in order to make this, so to speak, transaction, even if it's just information, even just, you said, looking in the eyes. How can you look in the eye on something that's digital, right? So the looking in the eye, so to speak, would be me trusting via this consensus mechanism, via these validators who are going to be my eyes, and make sure that I can trust that, whoever I'm gonna make a transaction with. So that's the way I'm thinking about DeFi, and I can even give you a scenario of how I think it's going to go. But let you talk now, because I talked enough probably.
No, you can keep going. The only thing I'll add to that is that just the layer more on the trust aspect of it is, I think humans are inherently hardwired to not pay attention to things if they're going well until they go badly, and then we overselect for how bad it is, and we're hardwired to overselect for how bad things are constantly. Right. But I think an interesting scenario, so I'll talk about it in like pharmaceuticals in the coming here, is like, I think it was the early 90s. There was like a rash of Tylenol that was laced with arsenic. And afterwards, in order for people to trust, so like all Tylenol gets pulled off the shelf, but to trust it, they started wrapping it in all those little bits of foil and then putting the cotton in there. Right. So in order to know, like, so you could trust, like, oh, I can take Tylenol again. Right. Because you would think like, how, like, if you heard some people were dying from arsenic and Tylenol, like how easily would you go reach for that, like, red and white bottle? Like, I don't know about that. Right. Yeah. I even still think about it because of like how much of a trusting system we have even with this.
Exactly.
But that gives us some peace of mind until all of a sudden it doesn't. And the interesting thing about decentralized finance is, because the network is continuing forward in time, essentially, right? And people are investing into energy, because really it's all run on electrons that are continuously fed across everywhere. And so long as people are still investing that into it, it's going to keep going forward, and you can't mess with it in any way, right? You can't tamper with it. And that's what's going to continue to give us trust to be able to use it as a means of transaction, which is quite startlingly different if we were to think about dollars. Right. Most people don't, because it's just like in an account, how much do we even use cash? Like, I never practically ever have cash on me. Right. In fact, if I find cash in my wallet, sometimes I mistake it for a receipt, and I'm like, oh, do I have a receipt? And then it's like, oh my God, where did that 20 come from? Like, that's how little I have cash ever. But
when that, when happens to me, when sometimes you go on like you take a cab and someone say, no, only pay with cash. And I'm like, cash? I've never used cash, for years. I mean, what are you asking me for?
That's so funny. Where I live, there's a lot of places that only take cash, but I only take it from the bank and immediately give it to them. So like, I literally only have it for like, 5 minutes.
It's like such a bizarre concept.
Cash. It feels antiquated sometimes.
Exactly.
But the difference is that in this decentralized finance, because it is so atomized, you're actually closer to the network of all of the financial institution within it, as opposed to a banknote from a central bank, in which case, I mean, I think it's something like 40% or 25%. I don't know, some outrageous number of more money being in circulation right now than ever since like a year ago, because of all the stimulus and all that stuff with the US.
And this is why when people are telling me, "Oh, crypto is imaginary," is imaginary, and I'm saying, like, what? Your bank account is not?
Right.
I mean, do you think that you really have money in your bank? No.
Right.
Do you think that your fiat money is all imagination? It's all a fiction, and that's what people don't get.
Well, I think
it's a fiction. It's a big fiction. It's even more fiction than crypto. Because crypto, at least I can trace it and I can track it. This one, I don't know where it is.
But it's got these pretty pictures on it, though, and it's got these old dead white guys. If
you hold the cash itself, but you don't, right? Most of us.
No, you don't. It's backed by the U.S. Treasury, which is
exactly.
It says that in all of them. But I think the point, though, is that they're all ideas, right? Yeah. So like, all of it is an idea, if it's crypto or it's currency at all, right? I mean, like caraway shells is like one of the first means of currency that people have recorded. You know what I mean? Just like people combing the beach for just something to agree upon or whatever. But they're all just concepts, right? And some things give us more trust that we don't even realize, because once again, as people, we kind of over select for sight. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I can feel cash, I can see these like notes, you know what I mean? And people talk about it all the time, and I see numbers in my account, and I do some work, and those numbers go up, and then
Well, you can see numbers in your wallet on Bitcoin.
yes, no, yeah, you can, but it's new though, right? So it's like,
When I'm looking at my bank account, I see numbers. I see my bank number, right? This is a number. So I also have a wallet with maybe it's a longer number with some maybe letters also. So that's a difference. And then I see dollar amount. And so instead of seeing dollar amount, I see Satoshi amount. So Satoshi, so let's say you have yours, call it whatever you want. Call it, I don't know, James. Who cares what you call it? It's a currency that you can transact with. As long as two parties agrees on that, I'm willing to receive it and I'm willing to pay you that, that's all that matters. You can use a goat and a cow, which people have done in the, 1,000 years ago. And they still, made a transaction, I give you like 2 goats for 1 cow, the fat one over there, and the 2, skinny goats over there are going to be transacted. As long as we agree, that's all we need.
Yes. No, well, I actually, to your point, I think it's really put well, is that it's actually simpler of a concept on blockchain. Because if you abstract out of, okay, so I have a single bill in front of me, and the single bill is made of cotton. It feels, that distinct way that money feels. And it's got these like, writing on it. And it's got this weird pyramid with an eye thing. And it's got all this stuff on it. That like how that came to be in my hand, and what the real value is of that versus, a peso versus like, what's the real value of this in 10 years is way more abstract and complicated, right? Because there's all these different ways. They're like, oh, banks can print money as long as they have this, and they they go out and they lend more out, and the central bank can print money, because they're trying to buy quantitative easing. What's quantitative easing? Oh, it's this complicated concept where there's bonds. It's like all these different mechanisms of how there's more of these little bills that come in there. It's far more complicated, but it's so much more pervasive that people have like built the walls in their head to say like, oh, I don't understand that stuff. Like, in this case, like, oh, I don't understand the technology.
They don't understand.
No.
They think they understand, but once you tell them that it's a fiction, they don't understand what it means that it's a fiction. All they understand, if I will start, talking the real theory of economics, people lose me. It's exactly like talking technology, because they don't understand how money really works.
Right.
All they know, there's an account, and they see, a number of dollars that they have in their account. I don't know, $1,000 in their account, and they have $1,000 in their account. And I'm saying, okay, so now you go to Bitcoin and you see 1,000 Satoshis in your account. What's the difference? No difference.
Right.
In fact, the $1,000 in your account are more for fiction than 1,000 Satoshi on your wallet on Bitcoin. Why? Because those thousands may not be 1,000. And they are tied to something, to basically, if you think about it, back to, my history of, how I got into Bitcoin, it's like, when I did my research on FX. So the fiat currency is very much tied to that economy. So if it's a strong economy, so strong that you always see that that it's because it's all about in pairs, to compare basically comparing one economy to another. When you have like the dollar euro and you see the exchange rate depends on the strength of their economy. This is why you have the Venezuela currency, which is, almost nothing, because the economy is not so stable. So it's all based on the economy. And this is even more of troubling, if you ask me, than if you think about something that is digital. that is all based on technology. The technology is not going to be fade away. It's not depending on some, central banks or monetary policy or some crazy, government who's doing all kinds of crazy things to the economy. It's technology. It's base rule. And it's going to stay there forever. The rules are going to stay and no one is going to change them. And this is even more, you have to trust it even more because you can even have access to the code itself. So maybe you don't know the code. So maybe you have a friend who knows the code, can tell you what's inside the code. But inside of the government mind, I would never know what's going on there.
Right. Yeah, everything is in the open. It's all open source, all completely readable to everybody. You can tool yourself up to get the skill, or you can trust somebody similar to like I'm buying a used car and I go ask somebody to come kick the tires and knows what to look under the hood for, right?
Yeah.
No, it's well, the economy aspect is so abstract, right? But it's like a known term, right? And I think that's a big part of what kind of cements this as a easily dismissed idea, right? Because it's like, well, there's abstract concepts, but I hear them all the time. They're familiar to me. Okay, like, some parts of it I don't understand. That's fine. Like most people don't understand the Federal Reserve or that there's a dual mandate or what that is.
They don't understand. They just, pretend. I understand what dollar means. Do you really understand what dollar means?
Right.
Because when I really get into the theory, because I have been on my PhD, if I really get, please don't go there. I mean, just leave us with the idea that we understand how the dollar bill looks like. We're fine with that.
Right. In this world of completely different structures, right? Because they're, the just simple structures that are able to build up on top of each other. How would finance look, and how is it starting to look, and what's emerging out of it? Because the interesting thing that I would love to talk about too a little bit more is, it was intended as a currency. Like the white paper on it is definitely talking about a currency. It's definitely talking about, fiat and just like the nature of, what a fixed asset. Because also something worth noting is, blockchains, the undercurrent of all these cryptocurrencies, they all have the different flavors of how they do things differently. And in all of that, but in Bitcoin, it's fixed. There's a certain point where there's going to be a max number of coins in circulation, and then that's it, which is a very novel part of it. But it's intended to be part of that, so that the value stores, and that, instead of deflation where that dollar is worth less and less and less, the dollar is worth more and more. Like something I was actually recently thinking about was when I was a kid and I was like in a farm. I lived there for a little bit. And some guy in like the local cafe was like, when gas hits $2 a gallon, no one's going to drive anywhere. And I remember thinking that, I'm like, oh man, like I've paid like over $5 a gallon. You know what I mean? Like instead of the dollar deflating, right, or inflating and becoming worthless, more and more worthless, because there's a cap, it gets less. So how is this type of financial world in which we have banks that can print money to loan, which is currently what can happen, right? They will not print money, but they can create ledgers to essentially to loan out more than their assets. And there's mechanisms for that. And, iStore in Chase Bank is the harbor of that, so that if there's some kind of bank run or something like that, or a hacking, they ensure it. Right. Since there's trust, and since this is completely decentralized as a mechanism, does the concept of banks even, how could that work? Like in the means of even loans, can you build loans on top of this? Would it look differently? Is this like a foundation enough to be able to have a financial system such as we similarly have now?
So yeah, it goes back to something that I wrote, which I'm going to send it to you. Which basically the way that I envision, the entire system is like, our entire financial system, any product or service will run on distributed ledger technology in one way or another. And the way that I envision it is like same like we have like driverless, cars, we will have like driverless banks. Everything will be coded. No, everything will be coded. I mean, if you think about it, which means that even the regulators, the compliance, officials will have to learn coding. Because the only way for them to really understand how it functions is if they audit the code, right? And not audit, some transactions and some papers, but audit the code. That will be the only way for them to understand, what's going on. And of course, before any app is going to be launched, it has to be audited. So that will be maybe something that will be to some extent self-regulated. The community will figure out how to self-regulate that, or the regulators, will create some kind of a certificate in order for these apps to be launched in a way that they are compliant. Because, once they are compliant and they're audited and monitored, and in fact, from the regulators' perspective, they should be happy. Unlike, no, I'll tell you why. Because with the banks, it's very hard for them to get access and understand what's going on. Right? I mean, this is why they have subpoena this and subpoena that and subpoena the other one and fine to millions of dollars to this guy, to this bank and the other bank, because it's all like, they're all like in silos and they're not really being transparent with everything that they do. So it takes them a while to even get into some problems. With DeFi, it's all in the open. It's decentralized. Everyone can see it. Everyone can tap into this. Everyone can trace any transaction. Everyone can track any transaction, including the regulators. And they can see the code. They can see exactly what's happening. And if there's a bug, well, it's software, it's code. I mean, well, we were humans. Some person, still, they're not, it's not a wind, going to come and write the code. Still people are doing that. So you can audit that code and make sure that only if it is audited and it is compliant, etc., then it can be launched. And once it is launched and everyone is happy, of course, big modification and of course under all kinds of probably rule base, etc. Then, but what I'm saying, they should be happy because it's good for them, not bad for them. There's more transparency, not less transparency. There's going to be more compliance, not less compliance. There will be more protection of the consumer, not less protection of the consumer. So I just don't see why it is bad for us. The only reason why it might be bad for us is because these financial institutions are going to maybe lose money. That's the only thing that's going to happen. But it's not bad for us as a society, as a community, as people, as what going back to the premise of what Bitcoin was supposed to do. So, but financial institutions will have to learn how to make money in a different way. Go out of your little box and try to be creative. Because, and this is why, I don't know, I wish that I could, some of us say, I might be like a rebel in my head, but I'm not doing it in action. Because in my head, I would like to really create this like uprise of people to understand that this is good for them. The government is saying that it's bad for you, but it's not bad for you. It's bad for the government, it's bad for the financial institution, but not bad for you. It can do so much good for you. It can really democratize society in so many ways, really tap into this underserved community and help them in many, many, many ways. Because the rule base is going to be, a code, and we are going to govern it. We as a society are going to govern these rules, and we're going to decide how the rules are going to happen. And we are not going to, have, and all these biases, why I like this technology, because I call it like faceless governance. Why? Because if you think about it, even when you go to vote today, I can see it, in my class, when I'm asking them to raise their hand, they was like looking at each other. It's like, no, I'm serious. There's like, there is a bias because to be outcasts. And we see that a lot in our society, that people are afraid to say something, and they're always agreeing with everybody else, not necessarily because it's good for them, but because they don't want to be outcasts. So you never really make a change, because they're always going to be these dominated hooligans, I call them, who are going to force, whatever is, if your voice is louder than anybody else, then that's what everyone is going to hear. Not because this is what everyone wants, it's because you are the louder person in the room. And then everyone is afraid of you, and they're going to say, okay, we're going to do that. We're with you here. We're raising our hand. We're with you. But when you create this technology, which I call it a faceless governance, the DAO is another issue, which is central autonomous organization, is that you're giving power to everyone. I don't know your color. I don't know your age. I don't know your income. I don't know where you live. I don't know who you are. But you and I have the same vote. And it weighs the same. And you don't see me, I don't see you. And I don't have to be afraid to raise my hand, so to speak, on this system, on technology system, on this blockchain, on this decentralized system. I don't have to be afraid, because I know you can come to, you don't see me, you don't know me. And this is the way that we can really have truth for the first time in our lives. And really hear the voices of those who need to be heard. And this is only when we can really make a change. Now, really, like we're talking like a revolutionist. But that's the whole idea, that technology can help us get there. And the ones who are preventing that, these are the hooligans that I call them.
Yeah, it's definitely a better iteration than what we have right now, right? Like I always like the idea of like an iterable, like, calculus, like you're never going to hit the perfect line, never going to reach what you want. You're always gonna be overshooting or undershooting. But the point is that each time you get a little bit closer, right? Like technology development is the same thing. Like iterations is like a core tenet of building software, or I mean, really anything outside of like really constrained environments like NASA or something. But something that you mentioned earlier is that economics is really social studies or social sciences, right? Because it really is. It's value and how much do people place into that value, and then behavior. And one of the amazing things about economics that I always it's changing a little bit now somewhat, except for with COVID, I feel like it's gone backwards actually. But that it was that people behave in ways that are irrational, right? And they make decisions that are irrational, right? Like you think like, oh, here's a great one from the the housing collapse. Like, people will do anything they can to keep in their homes. So that is the best fixed asset, because they will sell their car. They will do anything they can to stay in that house. Well, yeah, that's true, until all of a sudden you're having them, with the balloon payment that they can't make the payments. And by the way, you just gave a $3 million house to a janitor, right? Not that there's anything wrong with that, but he's not making the money. So I guess there is something wrong with giving that money away, because it's setting them up for failure, right? But that's the system that, occurs. And the interesting thing about this, to tie it back with the regulators, is, like if your job is to find robbers and there's no robbers anymore, like you're not going to want to do that. It's the job of a robber catcher is selected for a certain type of person who wants to do that. So changing the whole system in order to make yourself obsolete, who would want to do that, right? And it goes back to like the irrational actors, right? Like we're, on paper, like, oh, so you're telling me, Bernie Madoff can never happen because there's a ledger that says all the transactions and trades he makes, and
but sure, you see, this thing could never happen if you have a blockchain.
No, because
it will not happen.
He can send his email saying I made 12% this quarter, but they would just look at the chain and say like, what are you talking about?
Exactly.
People just keep adding to it. What's
exactly.
going on with this?
Exactly. So he can never do that. I mean, this is why it should be, the regulators should be happy, because this kind of situation will never happen. You can't create something that doesn't exist on the blockchain. You can't. What did he do? He created something that doesn't exist. What is a Ponzi scheme? You create something that doesn't exist. But you cannot do it on a blockchain. You can't, make something up.
Right.
And you can read the code, you know exactly what's in the code. You can see if the code is creating something that never exists, but you can track it. You can see everything that happens. And this is why, when something happens on the blockchain, it immediately gets detected. Like, for example, there was this, kind of, I don't know, they say like a scammer on OpenSea. Remember that one of the employees of OpenSea, were trying, to buy before, the auction and then sell it, then, and it was, so, and the beauty of why, why I'm saying, I was kind of really amused by this because I was also interviewed in several places, interviewed me about that. And I was amused, and I even told them that I was amused, that even tried to do that, because it's probably lack the education of what a blockchain is. Because, immediately he was caught, immediately. And he had to, give everything, back, and also, he decided, before he got fired, he just resigned. But the whole idea is that it was impossible for him to do that, because everything that he does is traceable on the blockchain, which is Ethereum in that case. So you can see, that he bought it, you have the timestamp exactly, and you can always trace back to that account, and which account is if you really want to do that, because you can, not everyone can do it. I'm not saying that a layman person who on the street, can do these things. You need to have some understanding of, coding and, maybe data analysis of some sort. But what the bottom line is that he was caught like in an instant. You cannot do that in the traditional system. If it was a traditional, Amazon or something like that, you cannot do that. It will take you, I don't know, maybe never to find such a scammer. But on Ethereum, he was like caught like within less than a day.
Yeah. To like give a little background for anyone who might not know. So OpenSea is essentially Amazon for purchasing NFTs.
Exactly.
NFTs are non-fungible tokens. And if you can mute that just as an NFT, because most people get tripped up on fungible, non-fungible token, right? Not transaction.
Yeah.
In which this exists as this, it was created on this date, and this is who's owned it in memoriam of when it was created. And in this case, most of the time on OpenSea, at least, it's like digital art, right? So like,
exactly, yeah. They create all these, images,
right.
So you
Some
can, upload GIFs, you can upload, you can, I was talking to someone, said, I can take, the art that my 4-year-old did, and, NFT. I said, I can do that. And I don't know who's going to buy it, but let's say. So you can do something like that. And, you digitize it. Basically, you take everything and you digitize it, and then you sell it. So that's how you can think about it. And you tokenize it. That's the way that it's transferred.
Right. So, and that's how it moves through. And the beauty of it, I was approached to run a project actually like 2017 or 18 of doing home titles on a blockchain. And I was like, oh my God, that's perfect. Like, who's on this home? When do they buy it? Like, you can even like throw on like when was work done on it? Like all these things can be.
I would like, if you're still working that, I would like to work with you. I'm thinking about how to basically put on the blockchain the entire real estate system.
Oh, you could totally do it. But what killed that in the water, and what kind of kills everything else that's this type of system for it, is regulators. Right? Like,
no, you need in fact to go county by county. But once you get a few counties on, you may get all of them. You have to create like a proof of concept. So if you want to go back to that idea, let me know. No, I'm serious.
Yeah, no, I'm serious too. We can talk about that, but it's a great idea, but it comes up against, well, in this case, regulators, but in who's regulating art sales, right? Like I can create an Etsy and I can sell something on that, or I can sell my artwork on there, or I can, transact prints of it or something like that. But this is digitizing the actual
But
digital
exactly
asset.
my point here, when they were asking me, I said to them, like when they were interviewing me, I was saying to them, look, you can't scam here. Everything is authenticated. So I'd rather buy on OpenSea than on Etsy, if you ask me.
I could see that. It's a completely decentralized way of feedback, and that this is real, this is existing.
It has authentication that this is real, who created that, the timestamp, I have a certificate, and no one can scam me, because if there is a scammer, it's going to be caught, in an instant. So now I don't think that anyone is going to do this scamming on OpenSea, because they know it's not possible.
Well, the crazy thing about that though is like, which is why I was kind of setting it back up, is, it's minted, the artist created it. And then if you bought it beforehand, then the company, the platforms, anybody is going to immediately know, like, hey bro, like I see that it says your wallet. Right. And then like you were the only one that had access to this code that could have altered it to be in this wallet. Right. Like something like that could have happened for a long time. I mean, you couldn't, like the Superman 2 scam of like taking a little bit of money out of all these bank account transactions. You can't do that, because then they would know the wallet, and then at least the wallet could be like isolated. Right. And then you can go to try to figure out who it is. But once the wallet is isolated, like you can't touch it. It's just, it's like a sanction at that point.
Exactly. No, and this is, how the FBI, in fact, is saying, nowadays, when they give you that information about terrorists, you have the bank account, the name, the password, and everything. Now they also have like the Bitcoin account. So now, that's part of, the other identity, because you can identify them, and then that if someone send you a message from that ID on Bitcoin, don't even transact with them. So the FBI, I mean, with the help, of course, of chain analysis, you probably know who they are, like the company that does a lot of all this AI information with blockchain data. So it's possible. Everything is possible today. Yes, you need skills. I'm not saying that everyone on the street can do it. But it's possible to trace it. So I would want to trust this more than any bank or Etsy or Amazon or anything like that, if you ask me. If I have, to decide whether to buy it on OpenSea or to buy it on Etsy, I will buy it on OpenSea.
Yeah, I could see that. And if you get enough people to buy into it, it's almost like shopping local, but instead it's using like a currency that's equivalent of that, right? Like, you go and buy something from your local store, it's got people from local artisans, whatever you buy that money is going to stay within the general community you live in.
Right.
And it's the profit of, transacting those microtransactions, in which case that's how banks can make money off of the user fees. Like, American Express, notoriously isn't accepted in as many places because they have a charge percentage they charge the merchants. So like, instead of them getting it, it's kept within the people who are helping perpetuate the system itself, which is simple and so
empowering.
Yeah, so powerful. Yeah. It's interesting though. I think it's interesting, the comment you made too, of how banks are just going to have to get smarter. They're going to have to be more creative, more novel, because, have you ever read, what is her name? Bethany McLean's All the Devils Are Here? It's about it's like about the financial collapse. It's like from the Shakespeare's The Tempest, and the beginning part of the line is, hell is empty, all the devils are here. And she details like, all of the stuff that was going on with the financial collapse and the big companies that kind of perpetuated it and so on. And the interesting thing when I was reading it was, I was like, oh my God, like all these derivatives, which are just like ways of creating,
which are fiction. If you think about it, people are saying, like crypto is fiction. This is the fiction of the fiction of the fiction.
Yeah, they got meta really quick, because it's like, I'm going to bundle a bunch of people's, debt on paper into more
Right.
people's debt on paper, and then I'm going to bundle, so like the same bundle, the same debt on paper could be in multiple different assets at once,
Yes.
which is a mind meld, because it's like, okay, so then there's people who can take bets on if that's going to default or not. So there's this entire, the thing I was thinking when I was reading this was, I was just like, man, this is so creative, is actually what I thought. Cause it's like,
it is creative.
You're getting all these layers of abstraction, but really it's creative if all you're thinking about, which is a novel thought that I'm having right now talking to you, is it's only creative if all you're working on is that same spreadsheet and the same mechanism of how you've been working before, right? Where now it's like, well, okay, so you're not able to make those type of transactions anymore. You're not able to, there hasn't been any rules yet of how you can create type of, different types of more money into the system, right? Like, how could you make that happen, right? And maybe in the beginning part, it has to go back almost to like 1.0, which is just, I have a bunch of coins. Let me, I'll lend them to you so long as this is the rule of how it gets back. And if it doesn't, I don't even know how it'd be, maybe some type of trickle as opposed to lump sums all the time, or what it would be. But the whole foundation of all of these layers of extraction that we've created needs to almost get a hard reset if it was to be in this kind of decentralized way. But the interesting thing and I would love to hear your thought on this, is if it's going to go that way, or it's going to go more of the way of like another asset class, right? Because to your point, Coinbase it's pushing you more towards trading between different coins or holding on to something. And it's giving you this whole way of almost like an FX, right? Like a financial, exchange, as opposed to almost like the Cash App, right? Like Cash App has it on there. They have stocks on there too, but it's, more of like, I'm going to purchase something with Bitcoin. So, how are you seeing the market evolve? Do you think that it's evolving towards a type of more transactional model, or is it still going to kind of like tumbling down this path of being another asset? Because Bitcoin is compared to gold more often. And just as a side note, it's amazing in 18 months, like the pandemic, just like I have this, thing that I stole from somebody else, that's the pandemic didn't change much. It just accelerated everything. And it totally accelerated Bitcoin. Like the talking of it from before to now, it's like, it's brought up as gold a lot. So
right.
where do you see this kind of happening, or is it both?
Okay, so here are my thoughts. Going back to my story of where it all began. Bitcoin was not supposed to be gold, was not supposed to be, a financial instrument, which is what it is mostly used for. It was supposed to be a payment currency, a digital currency, but a global digital currency in a decentralized system that I can transact with anyone, anywhere on the planet, for any type of transaction that I ever want to do. Whether I want to buy a yacht or I want to buy coffee, I can still use my Bitcoin. And I can do that with someone who is in Asia, in Shanghai, or someone who's in Malaysia, or someone who's right, across the street. So that was the idea of Bitcoin. Now, I say, and I have that in my piece, which I'm going to send you, is that greed got in the way. People got, impatience. Okay, I have a few Bitcoins. How can I make money out of this? Oh, okay, so let's create an exchange and start, trading it as a financial instrument. And this is where it became messy completely, because now I started trading as a financial instrument in some crypto exchanges, which are not really completely regulated like, even regular exchanges. And the speculators got in the way. And when the speculator, because, if you have and the speculator got, the upper hand, what they want is, to make money. And the volatility of Bitcoin, completely, got it out. And people start forgetting that it's supposed to be a currency. It's supposed to be for us making transactions. It's not supposed to be a speculative financial instrument. And this is how it got volatile. And people saying, oh, because it's so volatile, no, I can't make transaction with that. Well, I mean, why did you let the speculators even get in? But because now it's got accelerated with all of this, Coinbase you just mentioned, that, just trading like, I don't know, financial instrument, and you have all the speculators, transactions there and activity, which makes it more volatile. So it's like the more speculators you have, it's kind of exacerbate, the volatility that it shouldn't have. And it kind of gets further away from its, initial intent, which is the payment. Because you can't rely on payment that is volatile. So people say, oh, you can't rely on Bitcoin because it's volatile. But it's volatile because you decided to make it something it shouldn't have been to begin with. And now, because of that, people started getting into stable coins. And then stable coins became now, and then the government, even freaked out even more because, stable coins, we don't want the stable coins to be in the hand of all kinds of centralized companies, because at least, Bitcoin is decentralized, but if you have a CBDC, some stable coin that is issued by JP Morgan, or a stable coin is issued by Circle, or by Facebook, which is Meta, they always also want to go with that. Oh, that's even worse. So we don't want that. So, okay, now we're going to create our own digital. So hallelujah, we're back to central bank again. So we wanted to run away from them, and we got to the same point. So I don't want it to come to the same point. I want us to rethink again, where we started and why we did it in the first place. I don't want it to become a financial instrument. I want it to become, the first DeFi concept, the first DeFi app. And then we can build other DeFis on top of that. Other, tokenized mechanism, to allow this transaction between any one of us in the economy globally. I don't want it to be a financial instrument. By all means, no. That was not the intent. I mean, the fact that it became like that, it beats the point. Just people, wanted to make money, and they didn't have, didn't understand, what it means and what it's supposed to do. They didn't even read the white paper. They just had the Bitcoin in their hand and said, okay, what am I going to do with this Bitcoin? Oh, okay, maybe I can trade it. Maybe I can make some money. Instead of thinking, it kind of lost what it was supposed to be, because we kind of like deviated from all the concept because of all this speculation. So no, I don't want it to be a financial instrument. No, I don't want it to be, compared to gold. I want it to come back to what it was supposed to do: a payment system, a payment mechanism, a decentralized peer-to-peer system that, empowers people, that democratizes society, democratize each and every one of us. It creates beautiful things and trust between us, and allows us to really make a change for real, and not just talk about the change, but actually make the change. And that's what I would think that DeFi is capable of doing and will do if we do it right.
Yeah, so the bankers came in and fucked everything up by just speculating on it, dumping assets into it. Everyone has like a I wish I would have invested when Bitcoin story that's been launched long enough. For me, like, I was totally broke at the time, but I was like, oh man, should I just like pour a couple grand into Bitcoin? And it was at like $67 when I was thinking it. The last time I checked, it was like $67. And it was like literally around the time that all of a sudden all of these investment funds and hedge funds first poured money into it, and it jumped up to like $90 a Bitcoin. And at the time I was naive and I was like, I won't do it. Well, now look at it. You know what I mean? Like, it jumped up like 1 year, it jumped up like in the fall to like 19 grand. And then it went back down to like 14, like a few months later, and then like 9. And then all of a sudden COVID, now it's like, shot up to, I think last I checked, it was like back to 51. It's been like hovering at like 51 grand. per
Right.
coin for a few months now. It's like
Mm-hmm.
gone up to like 60 something and back, 64 or something and then back down.
Mm-hmm.
But regardless, there's been enough money injected into the system that are just holding it or selling it. The most interesting thing to me that I've caught wind of recently is how much it seems to be coupled and decoupled with the stock market in some ways, right? Like it seems like certain policy changes governmentally or like hints of it will all of a sudden more crypto money would enter, and then
Mm-hmm.
stock market's doing really well, all of a sudden money is leaving. Like just like last week, there was a big exodus of a lot of crypto because the stock market started doing well again, because it seems like the Omicron thing is people are not getting worried about anymore after it crashed. So, it is interesting. Though, there's the thing with blockchain, and I've been saying this forever with blockchain since I've worked with it, which is it needs like the packageable moment of, you know what I mean? Like the moment that people saw like HD TV in the stores, they were all of a sudden like, oh my God, this is different. You know what I mean? Like it needs that type of understanding of like, what's the transaction? What's the mechanism that's going to catch fire? Like, streaming with Netflix, and, all of a sudden that caught on. Like, what's the thing that's
Exactly. I
gonna
mean,
get it to catch?
so I think, and please go with me with my vision. It might sound, crazy, but the
I'm
way
liking it
I
already.
see it, yeah, I'm sure you do. It's okay. I live with that. So, if you think about it, as I said, everything in the economy is transaction based, right? Going back to the base. So the way that DeFi can really facilitate everything that we do without seamlessly is, think about the way that, let's say you have a home equipment, right? Say Peloton, let's say gym equipment. You do your Peloton or whatever you use, and you do your exercise, and let's say your Peloton is going to reward you with some tokens after you do this extra mile or whatever. So we all like to be incentivized, right? Whatever we do. I mean, ask my students, can we get a bonus question? Can we, they all like to be incentivized, right? So this is, part of, rationality or non-rationality, right? We like, to be rewarded. So let's say we are rewarded, for this, exercise, and we're getting some tokens. And then seamlessly, it's going to come to the point, when now the technology is a bit clunky, but you come to a point where you just, push a button, and it's already going to program, because, the blockchain, technology will know how to program that, in the code, in the smart contract already, that this, tokens that you just received from your machine is going to be sent to, I don't know, pay your mortgage, or to pay your student loan, or to pay your loan on the car, or to even maybe buy a Starbucks and bring it to you when you finish, your workout or something like that. But that's the way that I would see that seamlessly empowering, and this is possible only because of DeFi. That will be possible because all this transaction needs to have a decentralized financial system that will recognize the tokens from the machine to be sent to whoever needs to receive those tokens, whether for a payment for a loan or payment for a Starbucks. And the Internet of Things and other technologies will all be part of that, integrated together, like the multidisciplinary that we just mentioned. So all these technologies. So this is the empowerment of DeFi at the core. And this is how I like to envision our lives. Like we'll have a life when everything is like so seamless, and we don't even understand that a token is a DeFi. And a token just, this instant, bought my coffee and it's delivered to me, and someone is knocking on the door and nobody giving it to me. Or maybe a drone is giving it to me. I don't know. I mean, just think about where we're thinking go with that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because, well, now you're really talking about like smart contracts, which is what a
Yeah.
lot of people in the engineering side of it really geek for, which is essentially like
A
you
code.
said, like, yeah, it's code. It's coding events and transactions to occur given certain things, or locking things certain ways, or really just like, I mean, anything is just like if this, or for every time of that.
It's simply a code that, rule-based code. I call it like a rule-based code. If this happens, that happens. If this happens, that happens. Of course, you have to make sure there's no bugs, but it's a rule-based.
Right. Yeah. So in, financial term, it could be, if this is a luxury item, charge this much more that goes back into the system as a tax, because it's, a luxury item versus food. Don't charge as much of a transaction for tax as it would be. You can build that in there in a smart contract, and then you don't have to worry about it. The store doesn't have to worry about keeping those taxes. It's just taken care of and it's done.
Exactly.
Or the situation you're talking about is like, I want to be rewarded with, getting cheese sticks. I can't get cheese sticks until I've walked so many amount of steps this week. And if I go to try to buy cheese sticks, I, swipe the credit card and it's just going to be declined, because it knows like, hey, motherfucker, you get cheese sticks from this place. I'm not going to give you the cheese sticks because, you haven't done your steps.
So maybe it's gonna even help us, in our diets. You see, your diets can also be transaction based. If you really want to keep your health, and you want to keep, track record on your health, that can help you, be rewarded like that. So it's all going to be like in the code, like the rule based, it's going to track you, because everything is tracked and everything is rule based. And it can, and if you can't, how do you say that, control yourself or monitor yourself, then, the code is going to do it for you. It's going to give you as if a slap in the face, whenever you're not doing something right.
Yeah, and embarrass you with the declined credit card in front of other people, right? Just shame you into not getting those cheese sticks. That's interesting. Because are you familiar with like Chainlink at all? Like Chainlink is like a coin that developers.
The Oracle.
Yeah. Oh, it's Oracle, really?
Yeah, it's an Oracle. Chainlink is an Oracle.
Oh, I didn't know that. I should have known that.
It's a decentralized Oracle.
Yeah. Well, a lot of developers get like really geeked for it because it can transact between multiple different coins, and that's like the whole point of it. That's why it's even called like Chainlink. It's linking everything together. But you can, like, I think a lot about decentralized like websites, because that's like a big thing now with like Web 3.0. And just decentralizing information in such a way that it could be like housed in different places at once, and then you can kind of go like Mastodon is like a open source social network that you can build. It's like I like Linux a lot. A lot of people, Linux is really into it, and it's the same way where it's decentralized, so it's in multiple places at once. So things like Amazon's AWS outage, which happened recently, would pretty much
yesterday.
Yeah.
Horrible.
Were you affected? Do you have like a ring?
My school was affected.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Suddenly, I couldn't get into some, we use Canvas. It's like,
I know Canvas. Yeah. It's like a tech thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Blackboard.
So I couldn't get in.
Wow.
And then, I was, writing to them. I said, oh yeah, we have our service on AWS. And you couldn't tell me?
Right. Yeah. Well, that's the interesting thing about Amazon and the current like cloud federated structure that we have, is how much of our actual internet is in a small number, right? Like the web used to be like centralized in a decentralized way. And that what I mean by that is that so many people have this thing of like web 1.0, 2.0, because I do a lot in like the enterprise space, right? So everyone came with their websites, right? Like pets.com was like the big one. Like everyone built a website, they're like tracking commerce. Then all of a sudden it was like everyone's building a website, and it got rid of the yellow pages. And then people were like, oh wait, I could build, take all the files that we use and instead put it behind a firewall and have all the files on here. So everyone just copied their business processes and these like clunky apps. And then everyone started, mobile phones come, and then everyone's able to transact across multiple places at once. So they're like, well, we want to now get behind that firewall. And, but it was still this server. Like all these companies had these servers in their offices. Like I paid for college being a server and like a security guy at a company, right? So like, like there was a server room in the middle, and that's like where all of the files for the whole company and all of the financials and everything was pretty much because of what was there. Well, now that's moved to Amazon or Azure, or any of these other companies, mostly just those two.
Google Drive.
Yeah, Google Drive for consumers, in businesses though, it's mostly just Amazon and Azure, right? Like Google Cloud's kind of there, but it's mostly these ones. So we went from this structure that was somewhat federated between all these different companies that were managing it themselves, and now they offloaded to a centralized structure, right? Like Amazon is like, you have like Iowa, Los Angeles and Virginia is pretty much most of where the servers that serve everything is, right?
Right.
So in a way, just for these efficiencies, we've
But
caused a pyramid.
Exactly what blockchain was trying to create. I mean, what we're saying, that there's no one point of failure like you had with Amazon. If let's say one node fails, the other millions are still, operating. So okay, one copy is not working, but the others are working. And this is why that can never happen if you have a decentralized type of computing power or storage. So when people are saying to me, oh, but what, we have some outage like AWS. Well, it's not AWS, because AWS is one server. It's one point of failure. This one, we have millions of nodes all over the world. So maybe if one, part of the world is, people are always talking about the apocalyptic, scenario that, entire plant is going to explode. Okay, if that happens, we're all going to die. Who cares, right? But if it's not that, and only one part and the rest of the world is still working, then okay, that blockchain will still survive. And if you think about the AWS, scenario, just, even again, I mean, everyone who's against decentralization is supposed to think long and hard after this AWS incident to support decentralization just because of that. Because that's what decentralization is all about. There's no one point of failure. If that falls, okay, the others are gonna still continue, and we can still survive and do our work. And that's like, error. That's the message I got yesterday.
Just error.
Yeah.
It don't even tell you anything more than that. Yeah, no, I mean, in this type of like a mixed enterprise way, like I could easily see like a rule system being built on top of it, in which it says, people are coming to my site and using it, but then in the downtime, allocate the resources to this list of other things that I'm supporting, right? And because not everything is used all the time, and then maybe even we can have it be this type of, if we really want to start dreaming, where it's like a flip system where like, it's night for me, it's day for someone else. So like I could be running a bunch of nodes that are for Taiwan when my users aren't here, right? Because they're on another time of the day. And, maybe you're really talking about speeds of an electron at that point then, right? So like, your web page might load slower, right? Because it's, the economy of scale at that point of an electron going from across the sea and back again and forward and back and forward and back. But it's more sure in a sense of it being always on, right? And you can even have relay points of like, okay, well, maybe this middle part gets updated every once in a while. And then once a user needs the latest update, I'm only pinging for what has changed, as opposed to pinging for the whole thing back and forth. Like, what's interesting too is that Netflix, I don't know if they're still doing this, but they were dropping boxes near people's homes, like nearer like populated areas that had the Netflix catalog for that area in there, just so that it wasn't putting so much strain on like a central location, because video files are so large, right? So, you see this with like that, but, across the board, if the web was in a different type of completely different architecture, this really could power it. So like, while it's a simple means of storing information and value, what it started with, could be that, it might be that, or maybe just like the speculators keep pouring money into it, who knows? Or maybe altcoins just go crazy. But it's still, the technology itself can be having a completely different means of this entire digital landscape, and having it, to your point, being more true, more tangible, and then also actually more secure and stable for everybody, as long as everyone keeps pulling into it and moving
Exactly.
forward.
Exactly. So, I mean, I think the message is lost.
Yeah.
That's a problem. That, people just need to be educated more about what blockchain is and all the misconception that it's not. And understand that it's not gold, it's not a financial instrument, it shouldn't be even volatile. And we have to get to the core of what it's all about. It's about technology. Technology can do so many beautiful things to society and to our global economy and to us as people. And that's what we have to come back to. So the message has been lost, and I would like to revive it, if I may, in some way.
Well, every little bit counts, right? What happens is inevitable one way or another, I suppose, but the little waves along the way can sometimes create a tidal wave. I do want to ask one quick question before you go, and that's, do you think it could stable out more to be more of a financial mechanism when there's no more coins, when it's not minting anymore? Or do you think the likelihood is going to be, this is total hypothesization at this point, but or do you think it's going to be something like an altcoin? Because I can't remember, I really wish I remember his name right now, but there's an economist, I don't watch Jordan Peterson's podcast at all, but I saw a GIF of him getting his mind blown like in real time of like the energy transfer of how, if somebody has a place that energy is cheaper, they could be mining Bitcoin and then essentially storing that value of the energy computation in Bitcoin to then continue transacting.
I mean, also the energy issue is also got a little bit out of proportion. It's not as bad as people think. I mean, that's another education to do.
Yeah.
On top of everything else.
Yes, no, definitely. Because there's all it really is actually what it's doing is incentivizing cheaper ways to make energy, right?
Exactly.
Or more novel solutions. Like I saw something like submerging it in liquid that doesn't affect the silicon and all the type of things. There's totally different ways you could do that. But he said, the economist whose name I'll put in the show notes because I can't recall it at all. Essentially that, you have Bitcoin, which is a currency, and then the other altcoins are acting more as companies, which I thought was a really interesting way of putting it.
I don't like to call them companies because they're not. I mean, let's go back to what Ethereum is. So the way I like to explain Ethereum is basically take your phone. Your phone has applications, right? So if you have an iPhone, you have, all these applications run, like an iOS. And if you have something that is not an iPhone, then it's an Android, right? And that's like the platform that, these centralized companies. In the case of iOS, that's Apple created this centralized, platform, and Android, Google created that, centralized platform. It's a platform where developers come and build these apps, and now you have, these applications that are built on that, and your phone, is, having all these applications. So what Ethereum did, and all these other ones like Ethereum, whether it's Algorand, Solana, or Avalanche or Nolo or Polkadot and all of those, what are they doing? They basically took that concept and said, instead of a centralized application, we're going to create a decentralized application, because we're going to create a platform that is decentralized, not controlled by Apple, not controlled by Google, not controlled by any company. So it is decentralized, and any developer can come and build whatever they want. They don't have to go through Apple's, verification, certification, or whatever. And as long as they are following the rules and the consensus mechanism of the blockchain, of whatever blockchain, whether it's Ethereum, Algorand, etc., they can build whatever they want to build, and it can be launched. And you can track it. You can see the code. You can see. Something that I cannot see the code of the app that I have on my phone. Can I? No. But you can see the code of the apps that you have on whatever, whether it's Ethereum, Algorand, whatever, right? So you can see the code. You can see whether you want to interact with that or not. So you have much more control, so to speak, much more empowerment on what application you can use, and it gives much more empowerment to developers that any developers who has some good idea can do that without, paying too much money to all these centralized, because they kept getting a cut. And also empowerment to the people who wants to use this application, because anyone can use it. I mean, even if I don't have an iPhone, I can still use it if I, can tap into, Ethereum or whatever and do this application. So comparing to companies is so wrong, because companies are centralized. I would call it applications, decentralized applications.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
There are decentralized applications are not companies, because companies either association funds or it's centralized. It's controlled by a company. I don't like this association.
It's okay. Maybe it's more like a distro then. It's like a Linux distribution, right? Because the part where he was getting closer in an iterable towards the altcoin concept is like Satoshi is a ghost, right? There's nobody that's coming out and driving a force other than what emerges from the community as far as like protocol changes.
Right.
Like Ethereum was like, okay, we're going to alter the chain.
And but still, I mean, Vitalik is not controlling it. Even though Vitalik was the brain behind it at the beginning, it's when, he's not in control of anything. That's what people are missing.
His influence, though, that was the point I was going to get to, is that
yes,
his influence.
He has influence, but I understand that. And this is why, I'm very much in favor of Algorand, for example, because of that. Because I think that Algorand, if we give it some time, it has the ability, to, be maybe the competitor to Ethereum, because, everyone knows Ethereum, but, I think that Algorand is a better use case, a better blockchain in many, many, many ways. The brain behind it is basically, I think, is a professor, a scientist, computer science from MIT. So the brain behind that. So it's not like, someone who, some kid but the point is, even though he's the brain behind it, I mean, he's just, is sitting back, it's not really, influencing anything. So it's very much, community based and foundation based. So that's the why I another reason why I like it. And it's proof of stake and not proof of work. But what I'm trying to say is that don't talk in terms of companies, don't talk in terms of centralization, talk in terms of decentralization, because they are decentralized. All of these apps are going to be decentralized. And Bitcoin is also decentralized. So we have to think about decentralization, going away from the centralization and thinking how we can make it work. So we can think about another layer on top of that, like a DAO, which will allow us to govern it in a way that it is a community-based type of governing. So there's all kinds of ways to think about it that can make it happen, but we need enough education, enough people, more and more people coming into the space, smart people who cares about this ecosystem, who cares about society, who really cares about building the right solutions. And this is how we're going to get to all the things that I'm now crazily imagining that they will become a reality.
Yeah, that's true. More people get into it and more can understand the concept and then develop with it, build with it, interact with it. I think really once people start, I think NFTs got a lot more people into it, and there's probably 2 or 3 other more of these. I also think it's a bit of a generational thing. I think people who are younger, who are raised with devices, constantly from the cradle to the grave, are going to understand that a lot easier. And then it's probably going to just be kind of spinning from here and there. I would love to see a true popular decentralized social media. I'm surprised. Well, there is kind of one with RSS in a way.
Yes.
But
yeah, I mean, I think there was a report. I don't know. I forgot whether it was Deloitte or some other one of these consulting, companies, who did basically a survey between investors, who invest, in art and anything, collectors, investors and collectors, under 35, and those who 15 and above. And it was this stunning. I mean, I was not surprised to see that, but the ones, probably know what the results were. Those who are 35 and below are very much into, yes, we believe that, all this technology and blockchain technologies, 80%, 86% and up, we're thinking that this is gonna really going to change all of the way that investments are happening, the way that you're going to invest, you want to do art, and it's going to change anything in their life. And the 50 something, the percentage was much less than that, maybe in the 40 something percent. So, but if you think about it, this generation is our future, and not even them, is their kids are our future. The ones that, will not even remember how the dollar bill looks like. So this is the generation we have to think about. And if they believe that this is coming and this is how the future is going to look, this is what we have to focus on.
Yeah. And either way, to your point, back to bring it full circle, like it would make regulating easier. It would make, bad actors harder, right? Because I think this is another bit that's a true piece of human nature, which is, if there's layers of abstraction, our morality goes with it, right? Like being able to discount, what I would do that could be, increasing, it could even be increasing degrees of magnitude of the problem I'm causing, but because I'm further and further and further away from it. I mean, this is really the banality of evil, right? Like that's really the true concept of it, right? And in this mechanism, it's saying, well, we're going to understand that that's part of human nature. Is that, when things start getting to be either momentous or, layers of what you're doing every day, like the abstraction increases, we're going to build gates in there right away that make sense, right? The
will be built in the code. It's like, when you say, that they're gonna, if you didn't, I don't know, did enough miles, not gonna give you your cheese stick, and it's like gonna embarrass you, when you are going to the store. It will be in the code, right? So same idea, if I cannot, control myself or monitor, and we know that people, have some, bad in our nature. So we going to already create these gates in the code that's going to slap us in the face, so to speak, if we do something bad, and not allow us to do that. Something that we cannot really control in the traditional real world that we have now. But the code can do that for us, perfectly.
Right. And you're doing it in a way that's consensus driven, right? So if our ideas of what is a slap in the face change, we can agree to change it together going forward.
Exactly.
Right? And the interesting thing in this is that you can't change what happened going backwards, which, also could serve as, whatever going forwards. It's really interesting because, I mean, like, I feel like, and this is so hyperbolic, but it's true. Like time really is everything, right? It's just time and what am I interpreting, right? And that's really the basis of all of it, from an electron flickering to molecules coming together. Like it's all really what it is. It's how are we observing it in time, right? Nothing ever is suspended. And what's interesting about this is it's saying, okay, well, that is what we do. What parts of that can we memorialize and agree to memorialize and then continue going forward? Which I really think, like, so much of our just daily banal business tasks can be completely just automated to a degree that is probably better and free things up going forward for, you know what I mean? Like for less risk of things like the financial collapse happening with a bunch of bad loans. Because even if they were, I mean, one of the great things that Bethany McLean talks about in that book is how hard it was for people to see it that weren't seeing it, but people who really understood it were afraid but continue going on with it, right? Because of how hard it was to kind of see and understand where all this money was moving around, because it was moving around so fast. Where in the situation like an open source, it's not even possible.
Yeah, exactly, it's not going to happen because you have so many eyes watching it. So I mean, That's what I'm saying. It will be even better for us, better for regulators or for everyone to create that decentralized, finance or whatever else, that we want to create.
Yeah. Well, let's hope it happens, and that you're helping do it. You already are with all these interviews you're giving. Thank you for your time on this now and giving another one today after a long day. Anything else you want to mention? We covered a lot of ground. Sometime I would look, if we have time again in the coming year, talk about some of the decentralized, comparisons and things like that. I'd love to get into that more, into this kind of like quant side of things.
I would love to come back if you want to have me.
Yeah.
I would love to do that, definitely. And yeah, I mean, the only thing that I would like people to leave people with the idea that let's go back to where it all started. It started with a very beautiful, novel idea. So let's go back to that core idea of really empowering us as a society. We have deviated from that. And if you remember that, then we'll understand the power of technology and the power of blockchain.
That's great. And we can end where we began on this. So that's a great way of coming full circle. Well, thank you very much. I'm going to pause the recording.